they say love teaches you patience. But she taught me how pain can pretend to be care. I thought loyalty meant forgiveness until I realized I was just teaching her how to hurt me. This isn't a story about love found. It's about finally walking away from poison. If you've ever stayed in love hoping it would change, hit like because you deserve better than pain disguised as loyalty. My name is Riven Kale, and for a long time, I thought love meant never giving up on someone, no matter how much it hurt. When I met Leora, it felt like the world had paused just long enough to let me believe in something beautiful again. She had that kind of presence that made noise sound like music and silence feel like peace. I remember the first time she smiled at MIT wasn't just a smile, it was an invitation. Like she already knew how to make me fall without pushing too hard. In the beginning, everything was effortless. Our conversations stretched late into the night, the kind where time disappears and you think you've found your mirror in someone else's soul. She said things like, "You're the calm I never had," and I believed her, maybe too much. I'd never been needed the way she needed me, and I mistook that for love. I thought her intensity meant passion, her attention meant care. What I didn't see was how easily warmth could turn to wildfire. She knew how to make me feel chosen, but slowly that feeling became a trap. Her questions started sounding more like suspicions. Her affection started coming with conditions. At first, I brushed it off, told myself that love was supposed to be complicated. But deep down, something small and honest inside me whispered that I was losing pieces of myself to keep her happy. Still, I stayed. I told myself that every relationship had its storms, and this one was worth weathering. I didn't realize that some storms aren't meant to be survived, they're meant to wake you up. And by the time I understood that, I was already standing in the wreckage, calling it love. The first few months with Leora felt like living inside a dream I never wanted to wake up from. Every morning started with her messages, little paragraphs that felt like poetry written just for me. She'd say things like, "You make the world feel less cruel." And I'd read those words again and again, convinced I'd finally found someone who saw me the way I always wanted to be seen. She was spontaneous in a way that drew me in. Late-night drives just to chase the moon, impulsive road trips without destinations, laughing until our faces hurt. I'd never met someone who could make ordinary moments feel cinematic. She had a way of making me believe I was the reason her life finally made sense. And when someone makes you feel that important, you start giving them everything, your time, your attention, your peace, without realizing how much you're losing. I didn't see how she was carefully wrapping her world around mine. At first it felt comforting. She always wanted to be near, to know what I was doing, who I was with. I called it love. She called it connection. But slowly, her curiosity turned to questioning. Her warmth came with a quiet edge, a tone that made me second-guess my words before I even spoke. My friends noticed before I did. They said, "She's a little too intense, man." I laughed it off, told them they didn't understand, because I wanted her to be perfect. I needed her to be perfect. When you've been lonely long enough, even a cage can feel like home if it's painted in the color of affection. And that's exactly what she did. She built walls around me, and I called them love. The first cracks in our perfect picture showed up quietly, like whispers under a smile. Leora had this way of asking questions that sounded innocent but carried an edge I couldn't name at the time. "Who were you talking to?" would follow every phone call. "Why didn't you reply sooner?" came after every unread message. At first, I took it as care. I told myself she just loves me too much. But love shouldn't make you nervous to touch your own phone. I remember the night it started feeling different. I was laughing with a coworker over something stupid, nothing flirtatious, just easy conversation. When I told Leora about it, her face froze. Her voice softened, but her words stung. "I just don't want to lose you to someone who doesn't deserve you." It sounded sweet. Until I realized she was planting guilt where trust should have been. Soon, her love started feeling like surveillance. She'd scroll through my messages when I was in the shower, skim through my call logs when she thought I wasn't looking. And every time I caught her, she'd cry. I'd end up comforting her, apologizing for making her feel insecure. She was the one crossing the lines, yet I was the one saying sorry. That's how manipulation hides behind tears. Behind words like, I'm just scared of losing you. I began shrinking without noticing. I stopped meeting friends, stopped mentioning female coworkers, even changed how I spoke just to keep peace. I thought I was protecting love, but really I was protecting my fear of losing it. The irony? I was already losing myself. And that's when it hit me. Love shouldn't make you feel watched. It should make you feel free. The shift was so slow, I almost didn't notice it happening. One day, Leora's silence felt like peace. The next, it became punishment. Whenever something upset her, even the smallest thing, she wouldn't argue. She'd just disappear. Not physically, but emotionally. She'd stop replying, stop looking at me, stop being present. I'd walk into a room, and her silence would scream louder than any words could. And somehow, it always became my fault. At first, I chased her apologies. I'd ask what I did wrong, trying to fix it before it broke again. She'd wait until I was desperate enough. Then she'd soften, saying, "I just need to know you care enough to fight for me." It was clever, really. She turned my need for peace into her proof of power. I stopped realizing that every argument ended with her crying and me apologizing. Even when I didn't understand what I was sorry for, she mastered the art of guilt. If I wanted a night to myself, she'd whisper, "I guess I'm just not enough anymore." If I didn't answer her messages right away, she'd post something sad online, making sure I'd see it. Little emotional traps disguised as vulnerability. And every time, I'd fall for them. Because I loved her, and because she knew I did. That's the hardest part about emotional manipulation. It doesn't look like abuse. It looks like love with strings attached. I didn't see her control for what it was. I saw it as intensity. I thought, this is just how deep love gets. But real love doesn't keep score. It doesn't make you bleed just to prove you care. By the time I realized that, I was already trained to apologize for her storms. It started with a name I didn't recognize, Niall. She mentioned him casually. It's like he was just someone from her past, an old friend who'd been through a lot. I didn't think much of it then. We all have people from before. But soon, Niall's name started showing up too often in her conversations, too often in her smiles. I noticed her phone lighting up late at night, her laughter softer, more private. When I'd ask who it was, she'd sigh, "You don't trust me, do you?" And just like that, the roles reversed. I was the insecure one, not the boyfriend noticing red flags. She became a master at twisting truth. If I questioned her tone, she'd say, "You're imagining things." If I mentioned the late-night calls, she'd smile faintly. "You're jealous because you know you'd never cheat, and you expect everyone to be like you." Her words made me doubt my own reality. I started second-guessing my instincts, wondering if I was really the problem. The emotional distance between us widened. But she filled it with excuses. "Work's been heavy. I just need space. You're smothering me." Yet somehow, she never stopped checking my phone, never stopped tracking where I was. It was always about control, never trust. And every time I tried to stand up for myself, she'd cry. Her tears were her weapon, sharp enough to slice through my anger before it ever reached her. One night I caught a glimpse of her screen, a message from Niall that said, "You make me feel alive again." She snatched the phone away before I could say a word. The room went cold. My voice trembled, but she just whispered, "You're paranoid." And that's when I realized she wasn't gaslighting me to hide the truth. She was doing it to rewrite it. The night everything finally snapped, I remember the air felt too heavy to breathe. Leora had been distant for days, her phone glued to her hand, her eyes avoiding mine. I told myself not to assume the worst, that maybe she was just stressed or tired. But deep down, something ugly and quiet had already settled inside me, the feeling of knowing without wanting to know. She thought I was asleep when she left the room. I heard the soft vibration of her phone, the quick shuffle of feet, the whisper of the front door closing. My heart didn't race. It sank. I followed her outside, every step heavy with the truth I wasn't ready to face. Down the street, under the pale orange glow of the streetlights, she met him, Niall. Her laugh floated through the cold air. Light and familiar, the same laugh that once felt like home to me. Now it sounded like betrayal, dressed in music. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. Watching her smile at someone else with the same warmth she used to reserve for me felt like being erased in real time. I walked back home in silence, each step a question that no longer needed an answer. When she returned later, she kissed my forehead like nothing had happened. I wanted to scream, to break something, but instead, I just stared at her and said, "I hope he makes you as happy as you pretend to be." She froze, but I didn't wait for her denial. I turned away. That moment, quiet, final, cold, was when I understood something deep. Love doesn't always end with a fight. Sometimes it ends with the sound of your own heart deciding it's had enough. The truth has a strange way of showing itself, not all at once, but piece by piece, until denial has nowhere left to hide. For weeks after that night, I pretended not to know. I went through the motions, made coffee, went to work, smiled when she spoke. But behind every quiet glance, I could feel the distance, thick and suffocating. It's strange you can share a home with someone and still feel completely invisible. One evening, Leora said she needed some space to think. I nodded, pretending to understand, but inside, something colder than anger had begun to grow. When she left, I followed not out of revenge, but because I needed the truth to stop whispering and start screaming. I watched her walk down the street, her coat fluttering in the wind. And then I saw him. Niall. He was waiting by his car, leaning casually like he belonged in her world. When she saw him, her face lit up, the kind of smile that once belonged to me. She ran into his arms, laughing, and that laugh, that sound I used to live for, hit me like a blade. I stood there, hidden in the shadows, watching the person I once loved become a stranger right before my eyes. I didn't confront them. I didn't shout. I didn't make a scene. I just stood there, letting the weight of reality crush every excuse I'd made for her. In that moment, I realized the cruelest betrayals aren't loud. They're quiet. They happen in smiles, in shared secrets, in moments that were never meant for you. That night, I didn't lose her. I just finally saw who she really was. And maybe that's the same thing. When Leora came home that night, I was waiting, not angry, not shouting, just silent. That kind of silence that fills every corner of the room and dares the other person to speak first. She looked startled, then careful, the way guilty people do when they're deciding which lie to use. I asked her where she'd been. She said, just out clearing my head. I nodded slowly and said, with Niall. Her expression froze. For a second, I saw the truth flicker in her eyes before she masked it with tears. She didn't deny it. She turned it around. You followed me? You don't trust me at all? Her voice cracked like she was the one who'd been betrayed. I almost laughed at the audacity, but there was nothing funny about how easily she twisted the story. The argument escalated fast. She shouted, cried, threw words like knives. You made me feel unloved. You pushed me away? I let her speak until the walls felt heavy with noise. Then I said quietly, no, Leora, I just stopped being easy to control. For a moment she stopped. The tears vanished, replaced by anger that looked almost pure. She slapped me, not hard, but sharp enough to make the air sting. I didn't react. I just looked at her and said, that's who you really are. The silence that followed was suffocating. She tried to cry again, reaching out, but I stepped back. There's a moment in every breaking point when you finally choose peace over proof. That was mine. I didn't need her confession. Her silence, her anger, her eyes, they were all the truth I'd been begging for. And once I saw it, I knew there was no going back. After that night, something inside me went completely still. I didn't yell, didn't beg, didn't chase her for answers. I just detached. For the first time, I saw Leora without the illusions I'd built around her. I saw the manipulator behind the smile, the selfishness hiding behind the tears. And instead of breaking, I started planning my peace. My revenge wasn't about hurting her. It was about giving truth a voice louder than her lies. She still thought she had control. She'd text me sweet messages in the morning, act like the confrontation never happened. Maybe she believed I was too weak to walk away, but I was done playing the fool. I started gathering proof screenshots of her messages with Niall, the calls, the photos she thought were deleted. Not because I wanted to destroy her, but because I wanted to free myself without being painted as the villain in her story. When the time felt right, I sent everything not to her, but to Niall's fiancé. I didn't write a single word with it. The truth spoke for itself. Within hours, the perfect little secret world they'd built started collapsing. Niall lost his engagement, his reputation. Leora lost her mask. The messages, the tears, the excuses, they all stopped. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't post or tell anyone. I just sat in the quiet and let karma do what it always does, balance the scales. She once told me, everything you do comes back to you. I smiled when I remembered that because this time it did. The same game she played with my heart became the ones that ended hers. And I didn't have to lift a finger, just let the truth breathe. After the truth came out, the silence that followed felt different, cleaner. For months, our home had echoed with arguments, tension, and words we couldn't take back. But now, there was just quiet, and for the first time, it didn't scare me. It felt like breathing again after being underwater for too long. Leora moved out within a week. She didn't leave a note, didn't apologize, just vanished the way people do when they finally have to face themselves. I expected to feel triumphant, but instead, I just felt empty. Revenge had balanced the scale, sure, but it couldn't rebuild what she'd burned inside me. The hardest part wasn't losing her. It was learning to live without the constant chaos. My days became unfamiliar, but slowly they started to feel like mine again. I began small, cooking my own meals, visiting friends I hadn't seen in months, driving without checking my phone every few minutes. I even started therapy, something I used to think was unnecessary until I realized I'd spent years being convinced my emotions were the problem. Each session felt like peeling off layers of someone else's influence and finding my own voice underneath. People told me I seemed calmer, lighter. I guess I was, because when you finally let go of the person who taught you pain and called it love, you rediscovered the quiet joy of being enough for yourself. I stopped looking for closure from her. I gave it to myself. Every night I'd look at the empty side of the bed, and instead of sadness, I felt gratitude. Not for what happened, but for what it taught me. Sometimes losing the wrong person is the only way to find the right version of yourself. Months passed, and my life finally began to feel steady again. The storms she left behind had calmed, replaced by a strange, gentle peace I hadn't known in years. I no longer checked my phone out of habit, no longer rehearsed conversations in my head. It was over, or at least I thought it was. Then one evening, her name appeared on my screen. Leora. For a moment my chest tightened, not from love, but from memory. Her message was simple. I miss you. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. I stared at it for a long time, trying to feel something, anything. But there was nothing left. Just quiet understanding, the kind that only comes after you've healed from someone's chaos. Over the next few days, more messages came. She told me Niall had left her, that he'd cheated, lied, made her feel small and unwanted. The same words I once used to describe how she made me feel. Life had come full circle, and karma had written its own ending. I didn't have to respond. I didn't need to remind her of what she'd done. Life already had. She called once crying, saying she wished she could go back. I listened for a moment, then said softly, "You taught me what love isn't, Leora, and I'm grateful for that lesson." Then I hung up. There was no satisfaction in her pain, only closure. Karma didn't destroy her. It showed her the mirror she'd always avoided. And maybe that's the purest kind of justice, not revenge. It's not bitterness, but the realization that what you do to others eventually becomes your own reflection. I didn't reply again. Some stories deserve to end in silence. In the months that followed, I began to understand what true peace really felt like. Not the fake calm I used to perform in our toxic home, but the kind that seeps into your bones when you finally stop fighting battles that were never yours to win. Life didn't suddenly turn perfect, but it became mine again. I changed small things first. I repainted the apartment, choosing warm earth tones instead of the cold whites she loved. I started running in the mornings, letting the quiet rhythm of my footsteps remind me that forward was the only direction left. I even opened my old sketchbook again, something I'd abandoned because she once told me art was a waste of time. It's funny how the things we love are often the first casualties in toxic love. People who saw me now said I looked different. Maybe I did. My posture had straightened, my eyes weren't searching anymore, and my laughter came easier. I no longer needed validation from someone who thrived on breaking me down. I was no longer surviving love, I was redefining it. One evening, I sat on the balcony watching the sunset, the same view I used to share with her. But this time, it wasn't tainted by memory. It felt clean. I realized that healing isn't about forgetting the pain, it's about transforming it. About using it as proof that you endured, grew, and refused to let someone's darkness define your light. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of love anymore. I was ready for it in its truest form, the kind that doesn't take or control, but simply exists. I smiled to myself and whispered, "She taught me what love isn't." And that's how I finally found what love is.